Good morning. It's a lonely experience being a prophet in a season of doom. Elijah, I'm not talking about myself, referring to Elijah from the Old Testament. Elijah was the only one who saw it. He was the only one who understood what was happening to his nation, his people, his world. Elijah was a person of conviction. Eliyahu in Hebrew, Yahweh is God. That was his truth, his name. A controversial truth at the time, even in Israel, with its deep roots in the worship of Yahweh. For in those days, Ahab was king over Israel. Ahab's one of the biggest villains in the Hebrew Bible. Ahab and his partner, Queen Jezebel, served Baal instead of Yahweh. It's a complicated backstory, the rivalry between Baal and Yahweh, but for today it's enough to know that for the writers of the Hebrew Bible, Baal is the god of the enemy, the pagans. Baal is their god and Yahweh is our God. And King Ahab, the king of Israel, had chosen to worship their God. He built a temple to Baal in the heart of Samaria, the capital city. And Ahab did more to anger Yahweh, the true God of Israel, than any of Israel's kings who preceded him. Direct quote. Not least of which was the slaughter of the prophets of Yahweh. When Ahab came to power, he set his allegiance with Baal and killed anyone who did not adopt his chosen religion, starting with the prophets of Yahweh, hundreds of them. In that context, we meet Elijah, a farmer from the north, who came to the capital of Samaria to confront King Ahab with a message. As surely as Yahweh lives, Israel's God, the one I serve, just so there's no mistake, as surely as Yahweh lives, there will be neither dew nor rain these years unless I say so. Delivered that message to the king and then ran for his life, which is understandable. You try standing in front of a king who has slaughtered all of your colleagues. Tell him that God's going to hold back the rain for a few years. Doom indeed. So Elijah ran, and Yahweh provided a hiding place, a ravine in the wilderness with a small brook for water. And a crew of raven servants brought Elijah bread and meat for breakfast and dinner every day. Elijah's stories are stories of magic, whatever you want to make of that. For a time, perhaps months, perhaps years, while the promised drought brought ruin to the rest of Israel, Elijah survived in the wilderness. Eventually, his brook dried up as well, and Elijah needed a new place to hide. Some of you have heard of the woman known only as the widow of Zarephath. Zarephath was outside of Israel. It was an unlikely place for a servant of Yahweh to go to find refuge, but Elijah did. And as the story goes, Elijah approached this woman, a widow, a foreigner, and asked her for water, a bold request in a season of drought. And after she brought him the water, he asked for more. Can I have some bread? This woman had only a little bit of bread. She and her son, like everyone else, were starving. But she offered what she had to this stranger. And in return, somehow Elijah and Yahweh refilled her supply of flour and oil. For days, weeks, months, her oil and flour never ran out. She always had enough for just a little bit more bread, for herself and for her son, and for the prophet who made their home his new place of refuge. As before, God provided for Elijah and for his hosts. After Elijah had been with them for a while, the woman's son got sick, to the point of death. But Elijah wept and prayed and demanded that Yahweh undo this evil that had come to his generous hosts. And Yahweh did. The boy returned to life, and this woman was thrilled with Elijah and with Yahweh. After 3 years of this drought, it's a long time for no rain, famine was everywhere, the kingdom was dying. After 3 years, Yahweh sent Elijah back to Israel to confront King Ahab. Elijah tracked down Ahab's deputy Obadiah. More on him in a minute. Elijah sent Obadiah back to his king with a challenge. I'll be at the mountain, Mount Carmel. If you want me, come and claim me. At Mount Carmel, a showdown. This is dramatic stuff. Braveheart, Dunkirk, the OK Corral. On one side, 450 prophets of Baal summoned by King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. On the other side, one man, Elijah. Yahweh is God. And surrounding them, the full nation of Israel has gathered to watch the contest. And the challenge was fire. 2 altars were prepared with wood and animal sacrifices. The first god to light the fire wins. 450 prophets of Baal pray and dance and scream and perform ritual self-mutilation to coat their altar with their blood, but from their God, nothing, not even a spark. Then Elijah takes his turn. Just to up the level of difficulty, Elijah calls for barrels of water to be poured on the altar so that the wood and meat are thoroughly soaked. Muddy water fills the trench surrounding the altar. And then Elijah prays, Yahweh, God of our ancestors, in front of all these witnesses, let it be known that you are the true God, the real God of Israel. And Yahweh's fire fell. It consumed the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even licked up the water in the trench surrounding the altar. Boom. Game over. The people of Israel fell on their faces and worshiped Yahweh, the one true God of Israel. And then they turned on the prophets of Baal and tore them to shreds. Haters gonna hate, hate, hate. And Elijah marched over to King Ahab. Get up, it's over. Think I hear a storm coming, which was really clever trash talk because Baal was supposed to be the god of the storm, but now it's Yahweh that has taken control of the winds and the rain. The storm did come. The blessed rains fell. And Ahab raced in his chariots ahead of the storm to get back to the fortress in his capital. But Elijah girded up his loins and ran, racing in front of Ahab's horses all the way. Champion. I didn't have comic books as a kid. These were my superheroes. And this is how I want to respond to doom, right? With conviction, with courage, with endurance, strength, and ultimately victory. Right? Elijah survived the drought. He stayed faithful to who he was, his chosen identity. He conquered his fears. He brought power to the fight. And ultimately, over 3 long years, Elijah triumphed over doom. Except not. In spite of that dramatic moment, in spite of all the miracles and the power and the public display, nothing changed in Israel. As soon as the rain came and the drought ended, Ahab and Jezebel doubled down on their allegiance to Baal. They sent out new armies searching for Elijah to hunt him and kill him. When he eluded them, eventually Ahab and Jezebel moved on to other matters. They got caught up in international politics and domestic corruption until their deaths, years later, faithful to Baal all the way. And the people of Israel followed their king. In spite of Mount Carmel and their pledges and what they saw there, Baal worship, well, that was the national religion. The king said so. It was long after Ahab's death, over a decade, 2 new kings following him, before a new warrior named Jehu led a revolt that finally overthrew the house of Ahab and brought Israel back to the worship of Yahweh. Kind of. Religion and politics are always messy partners, and that's another story for another day. But Elijah did not prevent doom as he had hoped to. He did all this amazing work to resist it, but the season of doom, from that perspective, continued. Elijah's power barely left a mark. He only just survived it himself in spite of the miracles. He was still an outlaw. He was still reviled and hunted. And in the days following Mount Carmel, he found himself again hiding out in the wilderness. And there, Elijah gave up. He sat down in the desert under a bush and prayed for his own death. So much for the superhero. Elijah was done. I'm out. I've done all I can. Nothing has changed. Take my life and let me be. Once again, Yahweh intervened. This time, a heavenly messenger woke Elijah up, gave him something to eat, and sent him on another quest. Yahweh was going to meet him on a different mountain, in Sinai, the mountain of God. Ugh, what now? Elijah whined a lot and then picked himself up and went. for 40 days and 40 nights through the wilderness, finally arriving at the mountain of God and taking shelter in a cave. That night, Yahweh came to Elijah. "Why are you here, Elijah?" Elijah replied, "I've done what you've asked. I've been faithful and passionate in service to Yahweh, but nothing has changed. Israel has abandoned you. They've torn down your altars. They've murdered all the rest of the prophets. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too. I'm done. I'm out. I'm all alone in the wilderness. Champion." And Yahweh told Elijah to stand back and watch. A strong wind tore through the mountains and tossed boulders like nothing. But God was not in the wind. Then came an earthquake, shaking the foundations of the mountain. But God was not in the earthquake. And then a fire. Elijah knew all about the fire of Yahweh, but this time God was not in the fire. And then, after the fire came, what? Some of you know this. Yeah, we said it earlier, a still small voice, a sound, thin, quiet in the Common English Bible. Not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but instead God speaks to Elijah in a still small voice. Those of you who knew that answer have heard, like me, dozens of sermons on this story over the years. I have preached a few of them myself. The point is always, often, about expectations. We want God to work miracles for us, to show up in powerful ways, blowing up the obstacles, moving the mountains, burning down our adversaries. That's what we want from God. But most often the sermons go, God shows up in quiet ways, thin ways, in that still small voice. So don't just look for God in the big things, but listen for God in the small stuff within your own heart. Good sermon. I've preached it, I'm sure. And that's not the point of this story. Because in this story, God doesn't just come with the still small voice to comfort Elijah and make him feel better on the inside. Yahweh speaks quietly, but with a very specific message. The message is the point for Elijah. The listening, that posture is important for sure, but the content matters, not just the technique. And the message for Elijah is simple. You are not alone. You don't have to carry this by yourself. Elijah had positioned himself as the one standing in the gap. He's standing alone against the tide, the solitary champion in the fight for Yahweh. For a while, that fierce independence, that self-reliance drove him onward and helped him to stand. But then it broke him. He was all alone in his mind, and even his tremendous strength, Yahweh's strength, was not enough. Elijah was not enough. But at this moment of failure, Yahweh shows up to remind him, you are not alone. You have allies in this season of doom. First, Yahweh invites Elijah to expand his point of view. Go to Damascus in Syria. Anoint Hazael as king of Aram, the Syrian empire. Yahweh isn't confined to just this one people of Israel. Aram, they are foreign to you, but Hazael, his name means God has seen. Elijah, your despair has narrowed your vision. I am the God of the many, not just the few. And then Yahweh tells Elijah to come back to Israel and anoint a man named Jehu as the true king of Israel. Ahab, he's the king, but he's not the only option. If he's not going to change, if he carries on as he will, Israel isn't lost. There are other leaders. There are other ways. Jehu means Yahweh is. Ahab can do what he wants, worship who he wants, but Yahweh is beyond the circumstances, beyond whoever happens to put themselves in charge. And finally, most importantly, the still small voice tells Elijah to go and anoint a new prophet, a protege for Elijah. Yahweh has chosen and prepared someone else already, Elisha. His name means God answers, God saves. You're not the only one who can do this work, Elijah. There are others prepared to stand with you. The story doesn't end with you here in this wilderness. You can pass it on. The line of faithfulness goes all the way back, and it goes all the way forward. You are already part of something so much bigger than you. And then the clincher. Yahweh reminds Elijah, already I have preserved those who remain in Israel, totaling 7,000, all those whose knees haven't bowed down to Baal and whose mouths haven't kissed him. You're not alone. There are thousands standing with you. Elijah was never the only one. And actually, he knew this already. Remember Obadiah? He was the deputy of Ahab. He was the servant of the king whom Elijah met with to deliver the message challenging Ahab to come to Mount Carmel for the showdown. So Obadiah worked for Ahab, but Obadiah's name means servant of Yahweh. And he was. He was a double agent for Yahweh right under Ahab's nose. When Ahab commanded the capture and execution of the prophets of Yahweh, way back at the beginning of the story, Obadiah instead hid as many of them as he could, Schindler's List style. He hid 50 of them in one cave and 50 more in another, and he made sure that they had food and water throughout the years of drought. Obadiah told Elijah all of this before Mount Carmel. Elijah knew that there were others out there keeping the faith. Throughout this journey, he'd been met by helpers, from foreign villagers to humble servants to the birds of the air. Elijah was never alone. But under the pressure of doom, he took it all on himself. He tried to control it all on his own. And when that didn't work, it nearly broke him. His despair convinced him that he was all alone. But here, Yahweh reminds him that he is part of a community. And further, Yahweh shows him the way forward is not in the power of miracles. The still small voice tells Elijah, calls him to relationship, to people, to community. And that's what ultimately changes the nation. Elijah walks down this mountain and he finds Elisha. Then together they start a school. They gather the prophets. They teach them. They send them out to share with others. King Ahab does his thing, continues to chase the false gods, but Yahweh remains. The people of God are not extinguished. They're not in control, but they persist. Years later, at the end of his life, Elijah is again summoned to the wilderness to meet Yahweh. This time he doesn't go alone. He tries to. Old habits die hard. But now Elisha, his partner, refuses to stay behind. Elisha insists on going with him, and when Elijah is whisked away to the heavens in his legendary chariot of fire, Elisha is there beside him, watching. And not just Elisha. 50 other students had tracked them as well, and they were all watching from a distance, ready to help, eager to follow, ready to pick up and carry the faith after Elijah's passing. And that's what preserved Israel for Yahweh. When the political winds shifted, when a king was ready to serve the God of their ancestors, there was already a community there, ready to step up, faithful to the tradition because they've been practicing it all along, telling the stories, teaching their children all the way through. And that's why we know anything about Elijah. That's why we have his story, this whole collection of scriptures, because of a community that stood together through doom, faithful to the end and beyond. The miracles, the showdown, that makes the highlight reel. Like 90% of Elijah's story in the books of 1st and 2nd Kings are about these displays of power, because nobody wants to read stories about teachers talking with their students and organizing communal meals. The growth of a community isn't dynamic. But the outcome of Elijah's story was determined by quiet relationships, partnerships, people coming together, and then like 1% chariots of fire. That's the final word in this season of doom. Come what may, we go together. If you want to go far, or if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. The origins of this saying are unknown, though Disney has now forever associated it with Mufasa, the Lion King. Elijah, it's there in the story, Elijah ran fast, alone, and that mattered for sure. But what mattered more in the end for Elijah and for his nation was the community that he found. We go together. In our time, doom, whether that's the climate crisis or the shaky socio-economical political situation or something more personal, doom again feels so lonely and isolating. So many of us feel like Elijah in the wilderness, just curled up under the bush, just wishing for it all to go away. We have stood in the gap for so long. We've done all that we can do. Doom persists anyway. Or maybe we haven't done whatever it is that we should have done, and we feel guilty, as though we are somehow responsible for this doom. That's a different kind of isolation, but it's still isolation. Or maybe some of us are relatively new on the scene, and we feel like all this doom stuff has been thrown on us. Here, you guys deal with it. Good luck. Some of us feel angry, cheated, abandoned. Again, those are lonely emotions. We feel like we've been singled out, like we have to shoulder the weight of injustice on our own. There's so much in this season of doom that divides us, that puts the focus on me as an individual. It's my fears, my ambition, my independence, my productivity or lack thereof. It's a lot that comes between us. The divisions feel so real. One more time, this feels hard because it is hard. And yet, we are not alone. We are not the only ones. We have allies, people to stand with us, people to share the responsibility, people who also feel the guilt, people who also bear the injustice. And more than allies and partners in the doom, we are also part of the larger thing itself, part of this story of faithfulness that goes all the way back and all the way forward. Robin Wall Kimmerer describes the symbiotic relationship of a lichen called Umbilicaria americana, frosted rock tripe for non-botanist. It's allegedly edible. I don't think I would try it, but some people get desperate. And it's made up of two separate species, a fungus and an alga, which attach themselves to each other in a way that blurs the definition of what it means to be an individual, as a lichen is not one being, but two. The fungus part provides mineral nutrients that the algae can't produce on its own, and the alga photosynthesizes the sugars that the fungus can't produce. The alga makes the food, and the fungus provides the environment, offers the moisture that the alga needs to make the food. They can each survive as a species on their own, and when in the lab, when scientists provide a rich environment for both of them, the algae and the fungus choose to live separately. But take away some of those nutrients, make the environment just a bit more harsh, and in the lab as well as in nature, they come together to live as one. When times are easy and there's plenty to go around, individual species can go it alone. But when conditions are harsh and life is tenuous, it takes a team sworn to reciprocity to keep life going forward. In a world of scarcity, interconnection and mutual aid become critical for survival. So say the lichens. That's a great vision of what it looks like to live well in a season of doom, to be partners with those around us in ways that don't diminish the individual, but also come together to serve the collective. I know, that sounds like magical thinking. How can two things actually live as one and be part of this larger thing? But I'm up here living this out right now. I am physically a community. Within this body are cells and systems and molecules going about their individual existences, even as they make up this larger creature that I call myself. Some of them are entirely dependent on others and need this body to stay alive for them to live themselves. But plenty can live on their own, should they somehow make their way out of this body. Some of them might even become part of another body this morning if you're standing at the wrong place at the wrong time. I should probably wash my hands more often. We should all wash our hands more often. But I am made up of a community. I'm a community of communities. And going the other direction, I am part of a community that makes up larger communities. It goes all the way up and all the way down. I don't go around thinking about my microbial bacteria in my guts all the time, but perhaps I could use a little bit more of that awareness to take the edge off of the constant doom. You are never alone. Most of the time I think about that in spiritual terms. I call that constant reality God, Spirit, Christ, the presence of God in creation. This togetherness stuff can feel so sentimental and cliche, but it's the simple truth. If we want to get through doom, we go together. And despite our anxiety around doom of all sorts, this is goodness and gift. One final reading from Brian McLaren in Life After Doom. He recounts the story of a campfire gathering, much like some of us got to experience at various places this summer. That night around the campfire, I could imagine people gathering in small circles of beauty everywhere. On front porches, in living rooms, in forest clearings, around kitchen tables, even in churches and synagogues and mosques. They wouldn't require anything. No screens or earbuds, no pipe organs and stained glass windows, no smoke machines and amplifiers, no shouting preachers or fancy lighting or excellent graphics or even electricity. Even at the worst of times, they would gather and give one another life. In 2s and 3s and 10s and 20s, they would speak truth. They would celebrate goodness. They would honor beauty, to see it as the real story, the aboriginal story, the eternal, beautiful story. They would sing songs, recite poetry, tell stories, tell jokes. They would laugh and cry and dance and sit in silence, watching the sparks rise upward. And life would be beautiful in that circle. There would be joy unspeakable in that circle, no matter what happened outside it. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm doing here. That's what I want from my community, my church. And I don't know what that looks like for you. Bonfires aren't for everyone. But maybe it's a kitchen or dining room table or a workshop or a barber shop or a pub or a dance floor or a potluck or a gym or a garden, a walking path or a classroom or a break room or an online chat room. I mean, Elijah found his connection with just that one other bro, and it rippled outward from there. Whatever brings you together, pursue it, prioritize it, feed it, cherish it. Life is beautiful within that circle. There is joy unspeakable in that circle, no matter what happens outside it. It's awfully hard to convey the goodness of community as one guy standing here talking into a microphone. So I'm going to sit down and invite you to listen to some music. The song is One Voice by the Wailing Jennies, and I'm sure that some of you know this one. As we listen, I invite you to imagine your community, that circle of family or your connections with the natural world, all of the relationships that bring you life and beauty and goodness. Your one voice matters, and what we sing together matters even more. still and small and beautiful and resonant, follows you this week. This is the voice of God here at the end of all things, or at least the end of summer and this series. May the God of our ancestors bless you and keep you. May your time in the wilderness be brief and gentle. May the winds and fires not touch you and the earthquakes not shake you. May your battles pass quickly, and may healing come smoothly. May your seeds bring good fruit, and may you make your way to many safe landings. May you know wisdom when it calls to you. May you find comfort and courage amidst your fears and your tears. May you know in the core of your being that you belong, that you are loved. May the very face of God shine upon you and be gracious to you and give you peace. Come what may. Amen.